Welcome to AiTalks, a place to come and listen to IBM customers, partners and colleagues talk about the digital organization and how AI, hybrid cloud and enterprise software is critical to success. Welcome to AiTalks podcast. My name is Paul Russell and I'm joined by my colleague Paul Gatland. Hi Paul.
Hello Paul, good morning.
We've got a double guest today. We're very excited and very privileged to be joined by Andrew Carey from Deloitte. Andrew is a consulting partner in their real estate business. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
I'd also like to welcome Jane Muir-Sands, who's Vice President for Corporate Real Estate and Operations at IBM.
Morning, hello there.
Very informal, personal views. We've all got a real estate background, and so therefore the topic is going to be about what is the future of workplace, workforce and workflow. To kick it off, Andrew, perhaps ask you first, what lessons do you think we're learning from 2020 that's going to help us reshape the return to work in 2021?
We've had a huge sort of experiment in the workplace that was fairly instant from most organisations from certainly in the UK from March last year. And what that's taught us is, whereas we might have spent a long time of considering how to work in a far more agile way, to how to use aspects of technology, how to adapt the way that we interact with colleagues and clients, that has been a massive lesson for us all. Some of the things that we thought would not be possible, I would not have thought that I could run an IT technology project completely remotely, including the whole testing phase, but that has been done. And I think we maybe didn't think that we could continue in terms of interacting from a business perspective as well as we have. I think we've also learnt that there are elements of the way that we operated before that we can't do without. I mean, I think human interaction is definitely required. I think collaboration among colleagues and running workshops, etc., is very difficult to do completely remotely. We've also learnt, importantly, what we maybe can't do in this type of environment as much as what we can do. I don't know, Jane, from your perspective.
Thank you, Andrew. I mean, I think I'll just make a few builds on what you say, but completely support it. I think fundamentally, for me, 2020 reinforced the necessity to drive faster into the digital transformation of organisations at every level. And I think those that were more progressed along that model have been able to be more robust in terms of their response and been able to react faster. But I think it sped up the digitalisation of businesses globally. As you said, complete operating models have changed during this period. I think it's profoundly impacted every industry in a completely different way. Those that have been most successful, I think, in responding have certainly been those that were further along the journey. Probably like you, Andrew, there in Deloitte, we overnight here within IBM, we had 95% of our workers basically been sent home. And we were incredibly lucky that we had the robust platforms of WebEx, Slack to use. And actually, the take-up of those, it's been absolutely exponential. Interestingly, we've seen drops in more traditional forms of communication like phone calls or emails have actually fallen during this period. So what's also been an interesting observation, I think, from 2020 is not just the take-up of the different tools, but also the way we're using them to collaborate now in different ways as well. And I think that, again, has been true across all organisations. The other learnings that we can take from this is, as you said, Andrew, though, the need for social interaction and connectivity, because I think businesses have been able to not just survive, but thrive during this period. And as you said, do unique changes in business operating model during this period as well. I think we're all lacking that social connectivity. And I think maintaining employee morale and keeping mental health and wellness and well-being is something that we must also have as a great learning from what's happened, actually, because I think that has taken a toll on many. And I think as we hopefully now move towards a period where the vaccinations will allow us to go back, I think that is something that people are very, very much looking forward to. Certainly, we can see that in the surveys that we've done here within IBM. Whilst employees are very comfortable to work remotely and have been able to collaborate very effectively, they really miss the social cohesion and connectivity and the ability to really work things in the office together. So I think, as you said very much, Andrew, probably the traditional 5 days a week, 9 to 5 in the office, that style of working has long gone, but I think most corporations are thinking about returning in a hybrid format, build on the best of what they've got in terms of that fantastic ability to work remotely, but also to allow the really necessary human interrelationships, innovation and co-creation that you get from being together in a space.
Jane, just one for you, really. So I was interested to to see how you saw the role of technology, in the future landscape of real estate and the workplace, and also perhaps, how technology assists organisations with bringing their workforce back to the office, and really how you see that working from a real estate perspective.
Great question, and actually I'll welcome in a moment Andrew's views on this, given his role there within Deloitte. But I guess my view is a couple of things. First of all, we've seen that data-driven organisations, those that use data and insights to be able to make decisions, are far more effective in terms of what they do, and that is made possible through technology and the links between technology, the workflows, importantly between the technologies, and bringing those together, and being able to use intelligent technology like AI to assist basically humans making decisions from business processes. I think that's really, really important. What we see is that the role of technology as being absolutely critical to all parts of the organization and the ability to run it from data. So what I think, my experience both here and in previous organizations, you want to be able to have technology which is linked up. You want data insights from across not just the area that you're working in, not just within corporate real estate, but importantly actually within wider systems and platforms that operate within that organization. So you want to be able to look at things like HR data, and you want to be able to look at things like revenues or customers and access to customers, because it's only when you start to pull the data from those different sources together that you're actually able to make effective decisions as an organization around, for example, return to work, staff productivity, or access to customers and where you need to be based. And I think it's those things that for most organizations, they're trying to leverage from their technology and insights as well. In terms of the return to work and specific technology, of course, we're very lucky here within IBM. We've got a very robust platform of TRIRIGA, obviously as client zero for many, many years now. But what we have done, and I think this has been something that's been a huge, huge benefit, not just to IBM, but also our customers that have taken it up, is actually extend into that with the Watson Works component, the health app. We already had a very extensive suite of technologies around health, but what we've been able to do is link that up with the return to work. And that has enabled us to give an end-to-end experience for our staff, for our clients, which makes them feel safe and secure. And that's incredibly important in this environment. For example, if you were testing your temperature at home and you had a raised temperature, you'd be able to use the Watson Work health app to contact doctors, to get medical advice, to book appointments, to get childcare. If, however, you were fine when you took your temperature, you'd then be able to book your desk, be confident to go back into the office through the processes and controls that we've put in place in the office, for example, at the access points. But then, of course, we've got the IoT installed in the offices, which enables us to allow people to come safely back in, maintain social distancing when they're coming back in, interact in space, but be very comfortable and confident that we've got their safety and well-being first. So at the macro level, data and data insights incredibly important to guide key business decisions. And of course, when we're thinking about return to work, having the technology to enable people to return safely is absolutely paramount. We must put that first. And, I think that's at the heart of what we're now doing and driving here within IBM, which I think is fantastic.
No, thank you, Jane. That was really, really interesting, and particularly like the element of client zero around the return to work as well. So no, that was really great.
And Andrew, if I can kind of take you along to the idea of everything that Jane says, and there's some amazing insight to Jane's world in terms of what we think in the industry around smart building. Is there another version of smart buildings now that we need to think about? And is there maybe a more pragmatic approach to how we define smart buildings? What are your thoughts on that?
if we were talking in 2019, I mean, the historical thinking in terms of smart buildings, and we, in our One New Street Square building, which is to do the follow-on from the Edge, which I think in Amsterdam, which you maybe had on the previous podcast, the idea of working out, and from from real estate perspective, having the sensors in there to work out two main areas of how you can sweat the asset as much as you can and get the much and get the value from that asset, which is clearly critical, and then also get benefit from, if you like, providing data for the services of that asset so that those are optimized as much as they can be. Interesting, the world has changed in terms of, and this is there's an advantage of those that have smart buildings technology within their portfolios, because actually, and Jane touched on this, decision making that people such as Jane in their roles require is tending to need the smart building technology to be pulled together into some form of app. And we've got one in Deloitte, which is being built and will be used in the future, which pulls together all those elements of what is happening in terms of the space booking, what is happening in terms of security, what is happening in terms of people's health, what is happening in terms of the distancing, what is the situation with the lift and the access to lifts. Will you be able to go to the canteen when you want, or will there be shift systems in terms of the canteen? All these elements and that interaction between the individual, and we all tend to have a mobile phone of some shape or form, and the building, feeding very much to the individual. And Jane, you picked up on the point of the wider systems. I think that these ecosystems, it's not just real estate, it's real estate in HR and to a degree finance and procurement, etc., are all being pulled together from a system perspective, and all interact together. Clearly then leads to the scope for analytics, the scope to use digital twins to simulate performance in terms of buildings, and sort of advanced visualization tools, and as you touched on, AI, machine learning, and all those other aspects in terms of the top end analytics, which of course IBM is extremely strong in. I do wonder in the future whether actually it's going to move from being a nice to have to an essential feature of buildings. As I say, people like yourself, Jane, to run your portfolios more effectively, because you need that data and insight, and it's not satisfactory just to have someone walking around the building at 10 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon working out who's sitting at a desk somewhere. So, I think there's quite a radical change that we might see coming in. Got some thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, actually, Andrew, I build on what you say there. We're actually calling our buildings now our digital lighthouses. So the way that we're looking to bring people back in, and like every corporate, we're going through a huge amount of transformation in our portfolio as we speak. But you're absolutely right. Technology is right at the heart of that, not just the technology in the buildings, but the way that they relate to each other, the way that they allow people to operate as well in a hybrid fashion, whether they're working at home or they're ultimately in that office. So I think you're absolutely spot on with everything you say there. It's exactly how we're thinking about it.
People talk about there will be no more fixed desks, and there will be fluid spaces and flex on demand and all these fancy words that I think people talk about. Feasible, or do you think something else is going on?
These are great questions. And I think it actually comes back to the first one you asked, which is, what have we learned? And I think what we've learned, and we're certainly thinking about as workplace professionals, is why people want to come back into the office and what purpose do they serve. And I think there is a general consensus across industry and across business that actually offices are still essential. They're essential for people to come together, to co-create, to innovate, to meet clients, to co-create and innovate. Collaboration is absolutely at the heart of that agile working, purposeful agile working together in a space. So I think what we'll see, and certainly again, I can talk from our experience in IBM, because we're going through this huge amount of transformation in our footprint as we speak, is we're moving away much more from me space to we space. And I think, industry, these are not new terms, because I think, people have talked about that previously, but the acceleration towards, as I said, this collaboration of space, the types of collaboration space that we will see has accelerated. I also think we as well, given our long history, are adopting a spirit of experimentation around this, and I think that's important. So we're not quite sure what the future does look like. So we're going to set up our workplaces with the technology and the furniture that is fully flexible and modular and gives us the ability to reconfigure at speed once we've tested, understood how people are coming back in, how they're operating, and actually be able to make changes. And I think the experimentation, scientific approach to kind of really understanding, looking at how people work in the space when they come back, because none of us really know what this is going to look like. We also don't know, candidly, the clinical basis on which people will be able to come back in, and whether we will see any more of these spikes coming up as a result of, these new variants as well. So again, we're going to have to be fluid in the way that we do this. And I think that's the key here, is to have not just agile working in our space, but agile space that we can adapt a style of working that goes on when we come back. Andrew, again, interested. What have you seen with perhaps some of Deloitte's clients in this space? Similar, different?
It's very interesting from from Deloitte perspective. We had originally 12 different types of space. A lot of collaborative space, booths, etc., in that building, and banks of desks as well. The use of that collaborative space, which was proving quite successful before the pandemic, I think increasingly that will build the flexibility in terms of the building. And I do think the days of consultancy and sitting at their fixed desk with their AirPods in for the day and then going home at the end of the day and maybe having one or two interactions. I think those days may have moved on. People will realise there are different places to do that type of work. I still think there will be desks in offices, and I don't think there'll be a wholesale change. Although I have spoken to a client yesterday who has already remodelled their office for a more WeSpace type environment. And coming back to the smart buildings point and the sensing point, I think we had 12 types of collaboration space when we started. I think we've got 11 now. We've changed one because we looked at the data, and our internal real estate team looked at the data in terms of the usage of the space and who's sitting where, and one particular type of collaboration space clearly didn't work because no one ever sat there. That has been changed in the building, so there's an element of agility there. But the third point we have within Deloitte, yes, we've got tax consultants who want to be more traditional spaces, perhaps, and we have a large, young, vibrant consultancy practice who are looking for far more interesting space and collaborative space. And we were working on a project next door to our main building. And interestingly, just as you touched on there, Jane, they were thinking of that project almost like an IT project. So the fit out was, literally being able to, if they wanted to move walls or move, or to remodel the space, and rejig things and have it in really a flexible way. So, in a classic agile technology approach, that's what they were looking for, because that's how they saw the space developing in the future. And I think that will increasingly come into workplace design, where, just as you've said, and clearly you're doing in IBM, where you are thinking, how can we make this as agile as possible, as opposed to a situation where it's very fixed. I was in a client January, February last year. The desks on rollers and had batteries underneath the desk, so they can move them around at will. Whether that will catch on is another matter, but it's interesting they're trying that sort of thing out so that people could shuffle the office around pretty much themselves, as opposed to having to come back to some central location and do a mini fit out. So I know, Jane, is echo with what you're saying.
So the discussions we've had, not necessarily done in that way, but absolutely having modular furniture that's easily reconfigurable, because actually, when you think about the essence of agile, it is about different teams coming together at different points to innovate on a product life cycle as quickly as possible, from inception through to minimal viable product, and then basically being able to get that out in whatever form it is, whether it's on a production line that you're manufacturing. And those teams will change over time. The clients there will change with over time, and actually therefore being able to have workspace which is reconfigurable, which is adaptive, which is flexible, which is agile. That's exactly right. And I think making sure that you plan for that in its inception to make sure that you've built the technology as a base, like you said, almost thinking about the building as a bit of a canvas for technology, and also then the furniture as well that you're selecting in there, to make sure that that environment is very holistically thought about right up front, to make sure that those components all come together to give the right experience for people. Basically, that's ultimately what we want is to make people's experience a great one and to make them most productive. So, and as I said, experimenting around that now in different form to try and make sure that we enable that in the right way.
Andrew, when you talked about desks on rollers, and I was just looking at my work environment now in the house, had to adapt it. I mean, I've been at it for months and you know, I change it around. And I'm just thinking, you know, when I go to an office now, how much stuff am I going to have to bring with me?
Jane, a question for you around measuring work happiness and well-being. You know, it's been a hot topic since lockdown. So have you any thoughts around how we may get better feedback, you know, from colleagues, you know, regardless of their settings, you know, whether that's questionnaires, Slack type channels, or is there even a role for AI here?
Paul, probably all of the above. Look, when all of this happened, IBM, like many companies, were using sort of internal surveys through the crisis management team. And of course, monitoring those statistics. And of course, that was exactly what I was also doing in my previous role there at Unilever when this all sort of broke out, you know, when I was there just about 12 months ago. So very, very similar sorts of approaches. But I think, and this is a reflection actually now, because I'm, you know, several months into this with IBM, is a lot of surveying is leading to fatigue. And actually, we've got so much data coming in, and it, you know, and I'm sure it's just like everybody else, survey after survey about, you know, how you're feeling at home, what's the working environment like, how you're going to come back to work. So I think we've actually moved on quite a lot as an organisation, and probably all organisations have actually, just simply because I guess the length of the pandemic has gone on, and we've learned handling that now much more sensitively. We're working very closely with the CIO office, really to look at asking the right questions at the right time, looking at patterns as well in terms of the way that people are perhaps using tools or interacting. Definitely AI off the surveys as well, and being able to understand with open questions far more, perhaps lying behind that from a personal perspective and individual basis. I think there's still a role where we go back into the office to look at other sort of surveys, for example, like the Leesman survey, to give us a view when people get back into the office, how they're feeling. I think probably like many organisations, we've tried a different variety of tools. We're just now being very, very sensitive around what tools we apply, the context we apply it in, and when and how we use it. And I think that's the key. It's absolutely vital for every organisation. They really do understand the mental health and well-being of their staff. It's also vital they understand, I think, truly how effective people are in their roles outside, you know, while they're working remotely. But I think to approach that in a variety of different ways is probably going to get a better quality of data and information that gives us more insights. And of course, that's something that we've just learned over time, like most organisations, I think.
From our perspective, because you know, we've had all the surveys and like, but as a group, I mean, we thought quite carefully about this as a sort of a group partners with, you know, 60 or 70 people in our sort of area, and we've tried a number of different techniques. Everything from each of the partners is allocated on a sort of every so often basis to contact and talk on Zoom to you know, groups of consultants and talk to them individually. We've got a coffee roulette thing going at the moment where you just get allocated someone in the group to talk to, and you know, that's interaction. We've got our real estate radio that is every fortnight. Everyone comes on a call late on a Friday, and there's a bit of fun and a few games there. When people were allowed to meet, but they're only allowed to meet in groups of 6. Well, you've got to be careful with GDPR and whatever. But there were groups that met in the park to interact together. So we have had, I mean, the apocryphal. I'm sure we've had consultants who are, you know, have their laptop on their ironing boards. We've got, you know, consultants who are sharing in a relatively small flat, which is sharing with other people, so it's very difficult for them to work in those types of environments. So what we have tried to do, and yes, we've got the surveys, we've tried to make sure that we talk to individuals, and on a one-to-one basis if we can, so that they don't feel there's regular contact from that perspective. But I think we have found, and people have appreciated a chat, and there's no agenda to any of these things. I think people do appreciate the fact that they're not isolated, that people are talking to them. And we've got 3 or 4 consultants who have joined our group who we have technically never met because they joined after March, and they've been working remotely ever since, trying to keep them and joining a new group and joining a new organisation in some cases. It's going to be very tough for them to do that, but so it's taken a lot of thought in terms of interaction with them to make sure that they feel part of the team and they feel inclusive.
Maybe the last 5 minutes of the podcast is just to think about a little bit further about what big paradigm shifts are coming down in terms of technology. And I'm particularly interested about decarbonisation. I know that's a huge topic. Jane, did you want to maybe give it a crystal ball from your point of view?
Let me tell you what I hope to see, which is based on the goals that we actually corporately announced yesterday, which is that we will have 0 greenhouse gases and emissions by 2030. So this was a bold pledge that we have taken, and huge step, I think, in IBM's very strong history in this space to really protect the planet. And I think this is one of the most pressing issues of our time. And I'm absolutely thrilled that IBM has committed to this. I think it speaks to the values and the purpose of IBM. And given the impact of IBM's profound technology for other organizations, for example, we run many, almost the technology backbone of many governments, of many infrastructure companies. So us giving this pledge also has a profound and knock-on effect for many other companies in their ability to achieve a similarly aggressive plan around this area. And I think it's absolutely essential when we think about future generations. This isn't about just corporate social responsibility. This is making sure that our children have an environment that they can live and thrive in the future, and our children's children. So it's incumbent on us to take these bold steps. And I'm just, as I said, absolutely thrilled that IBM has now stood out yesterday to give that pledge. So that's what I am hoping for. And if I was crystal ball gazing, I would hope that we would be able to deliver on that in a robust way. Clearly, real estate, we have a huge role to play practically alongside our technology, but the way that we manage our buildings, we construct our buildings, we operate our buildings, but we also here within GRE run all our cloud data centers as well. So working and partnering with some of the co-location providers, as well as actually our own data centers, thinking around those relationships with energy providers as well. So we have a huge role to play. We have an enormous energy spend globally because of the operations that we run, making sure as well that we are procuring efficiently, effectively and responsibly is also a fundamental tenet. Andrew, I maybe let you talk about 5G.
To be perfectly honest, I think the most important topic is the one that you've just touched on. And I would totally agree. And I think, the Deloitte in terms of, and lots of companies, we're hearing this, I was talking to a very large pharma company yesterday. I mean, the pledges of all the major corporates and the organisations such as ourselves and many others in the industry that have, are coming through. And the desire to drive that sort of change in terms of so that our impact on society and impact on climate of real estate and its associated elements is clearly minimised and brought down to levels that we need to is pretty fundamental. And if we're going to say in the next 5 to 10 years where we would all like to be, not that we'd ever be invited, Paul, but have this podcast in 10 years' time, and say this was, the one of the outcomes of this pandemic and obviously the suffering that has caused is that it has refocused us on the whole sustainability ESG agenda, and as a result of that, something good has come out of this that we all are now, we all drove, to achieve the sorts of targets that will be really tough to achieve, but we achieved them, and that would be in 10 years' time. That would be absolutely brilliant, and I think we have it within our gift. We have the technology, we have the skills of people, such as IBM. We've got the drive of the corporates in terms of the purpose. So all the elements are there. Is just for us to go forward and deliver.
They are indeed terming this the Great Reset, just like you've said there, which I think is a wonderful way to actually sum it up, this is an opportunity for a great reset in this space. Just a great way to leave the conversation.
Andrew and Jane, I want to thank you both. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, but we've covered a lot, I think. Thank you for your attention and your insight from both Deloitte and Jane from IBM. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Paul, I want to thank you as well. And for people listening to AI Talks podcast, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please tell your friends. Keep safe and have a good day. Thank you.